Welcome to a spooky Halloween bonus video. Happy Halloween, everyone! Today's topic is all about one thing, and it's one of the main themes found in Elden Ring, and that's death, which right off the bat feels super spooky. But as we all know, death is simply one part of the natural order. But in the lands between, the natural order has been disrupted when Queen Marika removed the Rune of Death and sealed it away inside her very own shadow. But while death was taken away from the lands between, traces of it can still be found deep in the hidden realm of shadow, where all manners of death wash up. Even the pathway to the realm of shadow is through Miquella the Kind's withered corpse. But what did death look like before Queen Marika sealed it away? The Shadow Realm opens up upon a vast area known as the Gravesite Plains, and there we can find gravestones, both young and old. Spirit gravestones litter the ground, signifying this as the place to where the dead have been brought since antiquity or ancient times. The oldest manner of death is going to predate the Erd Tree, and for that, we don't have to look any further than the Death Birds. In the time when there was no Erd Tree, death was burned in ghost flame, and death birds were the keepers of that flame. Death's Poker describes the death birds raking out the ashen remains of the dead from kilns, and we know that these ashen remains can still retain the spirits of those who've passed on. In the realm of shadow, we find revered spirit ashes, which is said to quietly accumulate in the palm of withered corpses, which are called tutelary deities. I find this really interesting because, again, the entryway to the realm of shadow is through Miquella's withered corpse, and more specifically, we touched his withered hand. Cremation is by far the most popular form of afterlife care in Japan, and its traces lead back to Buddhism. Cremation was thought to be transformative and helps disperse the pollution created after a person dies, successfully moving the spirit into the ancestral realm, from a polluting spirit to a purified ancestral spirit. This idea of pollution versus purification makes me think of the congealed putrescence, or what remains of the impure lives kept within the stone coffins, versus the ancestral spirits, which are also connected to death. But back to the deathrite birds. Maybe it's just me, but I've long thought that deathrite birds resembled vultures. Vultures are scavenger birds who feast on carrion or carcasses. From features like their featherless heads to their large dark-colored wings, and of course their connection to death, I've long wondered if vultures were the inspiration for the deathrite birds. Then this year, introduced in the DLC, were enemies known as grave birds, which I feel like only further fueled this idea of mine. The grave birds appear all across the coastline and in the plains of the realm of shadow. They're stone golems which act as spirit grave keepers. They fly with wings of stone and spout ghost flame. According to legend, the grave birds were crafted to be kindred to the death birds. The gravebird armor tells us that the armor is stone with a tinge of green, and the feathers resemble those on the gravebirds themselves. I found these gorgeous images of white-rumped vultures online, and they have this lovely green tinge to their outer feathers. And take a look at some of these statues that are found nearby the grave birds. They are almost identical to vultures. Visually, I find them to be so similar, from their physical appearance to even how they perch or open their wings. Vultures are strongly associated with sky burials, which was also practiced by Buddhists, mainly those in Tibet. This is yet another connection to Buddhism and death in the realm of shadow. Deathbirds and deathrite birds appear in Caros' hidden grave. This region is clearly distinguished by its vivid red flora, and the tall red flowers resemble a real-life flower known as the red spider lily, Lycoris radiata, or Higabana in Japanese. They're a common flower in Japan whose name is derived from the word higan, which means another beach. This actually calls back to the line, all manners of death wash up here, as if they've washed up onto another beach. Many people interpret this to mean the afterlife, which makes sense, and the flower is strongly associated with graves, since they are toxic and were often planted in grave sites to deter animals from digging up bodies. Another flower that takes on the same shape is the ghost flame bloom, a blue incorporeal version of the Higabana consisting of literal ghost flames. It burns without so much as a sound. There is a saying in Eastern culture that ghosts don't walk on dry land. And indeed, in Japanese culture, ghost flame or ghost lights burn particularly on rainy days. I feel like Elden Ring really captured this idea in the atmosphere of both the cerulean coastline and the hidden grave, where it rains a lot. And then there are the gravekeepers themselves. Tibia is the oldest of gravekeepers, and it's a fitting name since all of the gravekeepers appear to be skeletons. The old gravekeepers are boatmen, or mariners. This is likely a reference to the Greek chthonic god Charon. Charon is often referred to as the boatman or the ferryman, and would transport souls of the dead to the underworld across the river Styx. The design of his boat is what's known as a skiff, or a really flat boat that's close to the water, and it features a spot to sit. The mariners in Elden Ring also appear to be using skiffs. Caros' hidden grave also sounds like a nod to the ferryman, Charon. Charon. Or maybe it's just the way I'm pronouncing it. What do you guys think? It seems that death was also once ushered to the realm of shadow by these boatmen. But what about the stone coffins that line the cerulean coastline? Those who drift to the realm of shadow in the stone coffins ultimately become congealed putrescence, bruise-colored ooze, an impure amalgamation of all that remains of the dead corpses once stored inside the coffins, unable to find peace in the afterlife. Those who drifted to the realm of shadow in these stone coffins definitely were handed a very poor fate. Like I mentioned earlier, there is some underlying juxtaposition between the purified soul released through cremation and the impure lives of those whose bodies were left to rot, ooze, and eventually congeal from inside the stone coffins. Perhaps it's because they came to the realm of shadow without a guide. Without a way to be released from these stone coffins, they were abandoned there and had no choice but to eventually rot and become congealed putrescence. This actually leads us to St.Trina, who is found in the stone coffin fissure. And now, after the events of the DLC, she is very much connected to death. All tainted flesh eventually becomes putrescence, and this clump imbibed St.Trina's nectar, which granted it eternal rest. Eternal rest is a euphemism for death. It's almost like St.Trina has become this new type of guide, the way that the death birds, the deathrite birds, and the gravekeepers once were. She is now able to grant peace in the afterlife to those impure lives in the stone coffins. Someone strongly associated with St.Trina is Tialie. His meek sadness and wish to endlessly drift in St.Trina's sleep makes me think that Tialie might have been written to represent taking one's own life. His words betray his willingness to go to the edge of his death and beyond just to reach St.Trina. I would sacrifice everything just to gaze upon her one last time. He warns us not to imbibe her nectar since it instantly results in our death, and yet he's done so himself. I am adrift in sleep so that I may hear St.Trina's lost voice. It's giving almost this Romeo-Juliet type situation where he is so desperate to be reunited with St.Trina that he's willing to take his own life. Just take a look at Tialie's concoction. It's a condensed sleep-inducing elixir that for an ordinary mortal, a single sip would surely result in a swift and certain death. Tialier thought of St. Trina's sleep when he created this, but the ebony sleep he concocted had neither the sweetness of nectar nor the gentleness of rest's embrace. A single sip would grant a swift death and nothing more. Now, I couldn't make this video about death without talking about the Prince of Death himself. Or could I? If you guys want to see a full-length Godwin video, let me know down in the comments because his topic is just way too big for this short little video. Once locked away, destined death is now unleashed, granting death indiscriminate to all those who dwell in the lands between. I hope you enjoyed this spooky special video. Let me know any other connections to death that you've identified in the realm of shadow down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join to become a member on my channel. And as always, you guys, I can't wait to talk to you all in the next one. Happy Halloween!